say we're live? Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We have an extraordinary panel here today to talk about a very important topic called platform dilemma facing every Web3 developer today. Before we get started, I just want to get a quick poll in the audience. How many of you are here developers? Can you raise your hand?
Everyone.
A handful of you. How many of you are founders? 4 of you. How many of you are thinking about becoming a developer in the Web3 space? 1 of you. Okay, great. So you came to the right panel. We're in the right place with industry experts from EigenLayer, AWS, and Chainlink. So what platform dilemma are we really talking about? I first started coming to ETHDenver in 2019. And when I came to ETHDenver in 2019, developers didn't have a lot of choice. There hadn't been a lot of platforms, a lot of L1s. You had Ethereum, a couple of Ethereum killers. Little middleware was built at the time, so you didn't really have abundance of choice that you have today. Fast forward to 2024, you have more than 400 blockchains, you have dozens of L2s, you have a lot of middleware tools, now you have modular architecture to choose from. So how do you make sense of it all? How do you find product market fit in the context of this abundance of choice? This is what we're going to cover today. So without further ado, I would like to start with quick introductions. I'll go first. I'm Kate Laurence. I'm the CEO and founder of Blockcelerate. We are Web3 investors, have been investing in this space since 2018. Personally, I spent 10 years at a global research firm, Gartner, and then I became an Ethereum miner in 2016. We're proud backers of companies like MakerDAO, QuantStamp, and EigenLayer, among others. So if you're a developer, if you're a builder, we're actively deploying capital. Come talk to me after this panel. Now, I would love to pass it on to Chirag, Paul, and Sid.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, it's great to be here. My name is Chirag. I'm the head of product and industry marketing at Chainlink Labs. I joined Chainlink Labs in 2021, and it's been an amazing ride. Prior to that, I spent about 5 years at Amazon, working alongside Paul on the Amazon Managed Blockchain, enterprise blockchain product. And prior to that, I was at Microsoft, launching developer products and AI products. Paul?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Paul Fullarton. I'm the GM for Managed Blockchain and Web3 Services at AWS. I've been leading that team for about 4 years when I jumped into the blockchain space, following a 20-plus year career in Web2, building scalable systems at Amazon, where I was there for 10 years, managed SNS and launched Pinpoint and a number of other services. And I was in telecom and wireless and unified communications before that. And I saw what was happening in blockchain, and I thought this is a challenge like no other I've done in that 20-year career. And so it continues to perplex me and excite me, and I'm excited to be here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sid Sanyal. I'm the VP Engineering, Head of Engineering at EigenLabs, formerly known as Layer Labs. I joined the team when we were just around 7 engineers and have been working for the last year and a month to essentially build out the team, a team of people composed from the Web3 crypto space, from the Web2 space. So it's a pretty dynamic place that we have created to really reflect what we are trying to build in EigenLayer. Prior to EigenLayer, I was with AWS for close to 5 years with AWS EC2 networking, NoSQL databases engineering teams, launched a whole bunch of foundational products for AWS. I also spent some time at Facebook building out the data infrastructure for implementing privacy controls for all the products. Then, of course, I got super attracted to the whole proposition of the decentralized web, worked at Protocol Labs and on decentralized data storage protocols like IPFS and Filecoin. And prior to my time in the US with AWS, when I joined them, I was in Australia working for traditional finance, big banks, as an architect, trying to make sense of all the things that we are trying to build in the financial services space. But right from day one, I've always been in the P2P middleware integration, like middleware development space. And this journey up until this point in time has been a reflection of how technology has evolved to put the user and the developer at the center of everything. So super stoked on the mission we have at EigenLayer. So yeah, glad to be here.
So one of the unique perspectives that we're going to hear about today is all three of you come from a very strong Web 2 background. And two of you made a transition into Web 3. Let's start with defining what platform dilemma means, specifically what platform, what dilemma, and to an extent that you can provide the bridge or the context of how that platform dilemma is different in Web 2 versus Web 3. That would be super helpful.
Yeah. The way I think about it and internalize it is from the context of one, monolithic versus microservices architectures. So monolithic applications have existed from the advent of software, right? So you think of mainframes. I think that was a monolithic application. Closed system. It is solely centralized, maintained and built by one team, and then over time that grows into many teams. They're all working on maintaining that one application, many interdependencies between all those teams to kind of build that application and launch it. Very conservative, but also very secure. Like if you still think about it today, monolithic applications like mainframes still power a lot of the financial infrastructure. My first job was as a mainframes developer a long time ago. Did not enjoy that at all. But then when you think about like as software modernized, software best practices modernized, there was this concept of service-oriented architecture in software design, which pretty much meant that you could break up a monolithic stack into multiple smaller independent software components. And that gives the developers a lot of freedom to architect those software components in their own way, also take them to market in their own way, and also that allows those different components to be very, very composable, and also that all those components can come together to really achieve the business function that you are trying to achieve with that monolithic application as well. So it still provides the business aspects of providing the intent for achieving the business application that it needed to, but now you have this aspect of composability and speed by which you can really move fast, you can innovate, and then you can quickly leverage it as a building block. So you can use those building blocks as literally Lego blocks, and you can use them and piecemeal together and piece them together into one application. Now, I think the dilemma kind of comes into the picture here is the interesting aspect as well, is that you want to innovate fast, you want to move fast. From a DeFi perspective, you talk about the concept of DeFi composability, where you have multiple different pieces coming together as building blocks. You could use a bridge, an L2 rollup, a stable coin. You could all integrate them into a new kind of a financial application. You could introduce new DeFi concepts as well into it. So it really helps innovation, where DeFi is today, it would not have been without this concept of microservices and moving fast, innovation, etc. But I think in my view, where the dilemma comes is that, hey, you want to move fast, but you also want to move securely because you are securing a lot of value. And when you have all these different microservices talking to each other, you want to really make sure that all those interdependencies, you are not compromising your security, because guess what? Your overall security of your system is as good as its weakest link. So that is why, to me, where the platform dilemma comes from, is going monolithic versus microservices.
Yeah, interesting. When I think about sort of coming from a long history of sort of traditional software development, I think about like system design and software development, and monolithic versus modular are sort of really traditional design best practices and concepts. And I think those concepts, when you think about it from just software and system design perspective, they translate from Web 2 to Web 3, right? And if you think about, I want to start writing software, if it's easier for me to get started by just writing all the software in one package, having a single environment where you deploy it and you can just keep going. But there's limits to how that will scale, right? How many developers can you have contributing to that? How scalable can that get? And that's really where sort of a modular design principle makes sense in terms of being able to scale that. If you think about like just general system software design, at AWS, S3 is one of our biggest services. It serves on average 100 million requests per second, and we've got hundreds of teams working on that. And the only way that would scale, it's built out of hundreds of different microservices, right? And so that's sort of just from a pure software design perspective. And if you translate that to Web3, we're starting to see that evolution where To create simplicity, a lot of blockchains are sort of a monolithic client. You have a single client, everybody runs the same client, and you can create a decentralized environment really quickly and easily. But what we're seeing is having that all-in-one stack where everybody has to run the same thing and everything, and all the data has to sit on one node. We're seeing that it's having scaling problems. It's also having privacy problems and things like this, right? And so this is now, as we're seeing the layer 2s pop up, we're starting to see modularization of that. And there's different layers of that modularization where we have modular blockchain design, but we also have modularization of the clients themselves where you can pull the storage out of the actual server and store the data elsewhere. If you take that to another layer, that's where I think it really becomes a little bit about decentralization versus centralization, and I think that's a little bit more of the dilemma. It's related to modularization, but I kind of think of it from a system design perspective, modularization. So when I think about going at another layer, and now you want to decentralize all of these functions, I want to make sure that I can trust the function that I'm calling at a given layer, and I want to be able to not have that function controlled by a single entity. That's still modularization, but it requires a lot more capabilities to do it in a decentralized way. And so we're seeing that challenge where you have all of these layer 1s to choose from. Which one do I build on? Well, I want them to all interoperate. Oh, but they don't scale. And so we're seeing all of the effort towards solving these problems in a decentralized world. And Sid will talk about the very interesting things that they're doing in EigenLayer to sort of create a decentralized modular infrastructure sort of environment and system design. But that's sort of where I see the dilemma, is that next layer up where we're really trying to decentralize things.
Yeah, sure. So I think the term platform means different things to different people, for example. So the goal of EigenLayer is essentially, I'll actually take a step back and try to explain the main ethos here. The ethos here is anybody who wants to build an application. Let's start right at the stack, at the top of the stack. You want to build something for your user, ultimately, right? We are building fancy stuff, fancy protocols, complicated stuff. Fine, that's all good. But ultimately, there's a customer, there's a user you want to serve. So if you start from the top, right from the top, I want to build a dApp, right? A decentralized app, because that's what you believe is the right thing to do for your user. The properties of decentralized of Web3 are important for your user base. Absolutely, build a dApp. If those properties of decentralization are not important for your user base, don't build a dApp. Simple as that. So, but my premise is that if you want to build a dApp, a decentralized app, you then are realizing that the very nature of a decentralized app requires a blockchain. It requires trustlessness. So, which means I need block space. And then you look at, let's say, Bitcoin or Ethereum, any of these platforms. Let's say Ethereum, a programmable platform, and you say my block space is severely limited. So what do I do? So I don't really have real-world infrastructure services I can use to build real-world dApps. So EigenLayer is saying that, okay, you know what? There's a lot of innovation that's going to happen on the dApp layer. There are a lot of builders out there who are super well connected to the ecosystems. They know what to build. Let's provide the infrastructure services. Let's provide the ability for developers to build infrastructure services, A, permissionlessly, and B, reflecting the properties of scalability, security, robustness. I mean, you're only as good as the thing that you use for your application. So if I'm deploying on a particular infrastructure layer, that infrastructure layer needs to be probably even more resilient than your app itself. So EigenLayer's goal is to create positive sum games and an open permissionless marketplace where infrastructure service developers, AVS, actively validated services we call them, they can actually be secured by the stakers who have restaked their ETH to secure infrastructure services other than the Ethereum core network. So once you have this sort of a economic game playing out, EigenLayer is essentially providing you this open platform to create these developers to this open platform to go and don't have to bootstrap your own network anymore. You just do what you do best. Build your infra service, build your bridge, build your data availability layer, build your sequencer. So build all these foundational things while they are being built in, they have an off-chain implementation, so you're not limited by the block space. And you make use of the on-chain primitives and leverage the cryptoeconomic security of the Ethereum proof-of-stake blockchain, and you get the best of both worlds. It's a complex thing to do, I understand, and that's why we are doing everything in open source. But we approach this from an open innovation, accelerate open innovation, and let us build real-world, scalable, performant infrastructure services. And that will create this symbiotic relationship between the infra service, and then the dApp developers will see we do actually have services we can use, like sequencers and data availability and roll-ups that can serve the needs of real-world users. Thousands of transactions per second. We can achieve it. So it can't be achieved entirely on-chain. Hence, EigenLayer is opening up the entire world of off-chain compute to allow traditional Web2 developers to come and say, you know what, to my users, these things are important. Decentralization, censorship resistance, user sovereignty, trustlessness, all these things are important, and hence I have real-world infrastructure services I can use. So that's the approach we are taking for creating an open, permissionless marketplace where all the builders and capital providers can come and create this next era of real-world scalable performant applications.
So I want to make sure that what you talked about is the benefit of decentralization, the benefit of using EigenLayer, and we'll cover the trade-offs in a second, but I want to make sure that we have a very clear definition of what platform dilemma is. So in your definition or in your opinion, is there a dilemma at all?
Yes.
What is it?
Absolutely. So, for example, some of the benefits that you typically used to get, and rightly so, you want to provide the best quality of service for your users. You want to have your application should be robust. You should have a predictable performance. You should be able to predict what your performance is going to be. My P90 latency under a certain amount of load should be this. I need to have a degree of predictability in my system. I need to be able to choose. For example, in Web2, for example, you're not always able to choose openly, freely, because you actually have to go through certain providers. But what you do get, though, as a trade-off is predictable performance. So similarly here, the dilemma is that if I go to Web3, am I going to get the same degree of resilience and predictability? And that's exactly what EigenLayer is trying to do, is saying that, you know what, it won't happen on day one automatically. What we need to do is remove the barriers to creating these services, which is basically, if everybody has to bootstrap their own network, blockchain network, it's not going to happen because you're not focusing on the core problem. So yeah, so we are trying to solve the dilemma of providing high-quality services that developers can build on top of the foundational infrastructure. So that's our mission, to make that a reality.
So now let's dive into the trade-offs, because obviously we talked about a few different architectural approaches. We talked about the concept of scaling economic security of Ethereum. Specifically, let's start with security. So how do you balance security while enabling developers to move faster?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, in the Web2 space, there are a lot of these kind of concepts that move fast and break things, build your plane while you fly it, and but the core kind of concept in Web3 is that you are securing value. And the one thing that every developer out there should always prioritize is having a security-first mindset. And that is the way that we can all ensure that more and more value flows into DeFi. So from that perspective, when you think about it and some of those principles that people talk about, hey, you can build your plane while flying it. So what does that translate into Web3? So that could translate into, hey, you could launch a semi-ready or not ready or an MVP product into the market. You could then continue to add features onto it. But guess what? When you're trying to add features and you have a very modular approach, you have interdependencies. Now you need to make sure you are testing and auditing all those interdependencies. Then you also need to make sure you are passing all the governance proposals. So what is that doing is that it is counterintuitive to innovation. So why not start with the security-first mindset and build a product and have the airplane ready when it leaves the hangar so that it is secure for the users, and it's secure for the whole ecosystem, and is secure for the trillions of dollars that the TradFi folks are going to bring to Web3. So from a Chainlink perspective, when we think about the approach, we think about it in a best of breed way. And the way I talk about it is, when you use more than one Chainlink service, you are not adding any additional trusted assumptions. You have the Chainlink Oracle decentralized network that is powering all the products and services that leverage it. So when you go from data feeds to Chainlink functions to Chainlink CCIP, you're all leveraging those decentralized node operators, their experience, who have experience in DevOps, running mission-critical applications, running them 24/7, who are going to ensure that your services are resilient, robust, and you're getting that whole benefit across all these different products and services. Now, as a developer, the benefit that provides to you is you don't have to do the undifferentiated heavy lifting. You have a great idea. You are now going to implement that idea and bring it to your users. Guess what? You don't have to build your own Oracle. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can leverage the industry standard, security-focused, reliable, resilient Oracle network and leave that work on the Oracle and focus on the business logic, on your creative idea, on your innovative idea. So now what you're looking at is you're being modular, you're being innovative, you're launching quickly, but with that security-first approach, with the security-first mindset, and leveraging that to build your app and launching in the market.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's always trade-offs in terms of different dimensions, and security is one of the big trade-offs you have to make individually as you're looking at what you're trying to build and what you're trying to deliver to customers. You have to assess the risk and the impact of, relaxing on some aspect of security so that you can move faster. At AWS, where we're at, by default, no questions asked, security is job number 0, right? Like, we don't launch any service without satisfying a very long list of baseline security controls and operational requirements. And that's just where we're at, right? We don't want to afford losing that customer trust. That's the most important thing for where we're at. And I agree with Chirag that in the Web3 space, this is where maybe we've, as a whole, on average, indexed on the move fast break stuff and not enough on the security side, given the value that's at stake here in many apps. There may be some apps where that value is different, but we've seen a lot of value lost because security probably wasn't treated with the right level of priority. And security in the Web3 world certainly poses a different set of challenges, right? You're deploying code to this open, transparent system. The surface area of attack and the threat models are very different and more challenging than, say, in a Web 2 world, like we're building at AWS largely. But a lot of these hacks actually were not just, complicated, bugs in exploits in complex contract code. A lot of them were traditional lacks in security where keys were compromised because somebody broke into a server, right? And this is long-standing traditional security, and I think we just need to kind of up the game in the space. Like, that particular area is something that AWS certainly can help any builder with, right? Consult with our security experts, SAs, and so on, to help sort of secure keys in the servers you're running and so on. And then as we think about like the challenge of those security layers, this is where really thinking about, and a lot of innovation is happening here with ZKP, zero knowledge proofs, and automated reasoning around smart contract security. So there's a lot of innovation that can happen to evolve that, but I think we just need to, as a whole, really up the game in terms of how we think about security when we're dealing with customer assets that have value to them, right?
But it sounds to me what you both are saying is that security is high stakes. So you might as well delegate it to best-in-class providers who think about security at all times versus trying to develop it yourself internally. Sid, for you, I have a slightly different twist to the same question on security, because obviously the whole premise of EigenLayer is to lend the economic security of Ethereum across other service providers. So a devil's advocate would say, wouldn't you diminish the economic security of Ethereum by making it more expandable? What would you say to that?
No, I mean, how you use the security that's available, it comes with certain responsibilities. Of course, you can't just do it in a random way. You have to think through. It's a pretty big area of research for us, and that's why we are not doing it alone. So security is something that you can't go into a room of 5 people and you figure out I've solved security. You need to basically engage with your community and understand what are the different ways in which security manifests, right? So economic security is just one type of security, right? But but the other reality of the situation is that if my capital is just sitting there doing not much, whereas potential could be a lot more. So the whole point of innovative solutions that internet and sliced bread stuff, everybody says that there's certain thing or the cloud, things are not possible. So you always have to take a step forward and think about how can I make most efficient use of resources. And of course, yes, you have to be very careful about the risks that are associated with implementing innovative solutions. But it's not to say that those cannot be solved. So Ethereum already provides ways in which you can have something called objective slashing. So it's nothing new to the protocol. You're just making it accessible to and useful for other infrastructure services just beyond the Ethereum validator set. So as long as you have on-chain observable objective slashing, so that's an obvious security you can provide to other service providers. So it's just extending what we already have. And then you actually are able to provide programmatic access to the underlying security offered by the Ethereum network. Yes, those primitives are being developed not just as a software update. It's actually being developed through a governance mechanism. So we are setting up veto committees, and we are setting up similar to escrow, right? Like you have an unbonding period for AVSs where you can just randomly withdraw stake and just walk off. So there is both process governance as well as the technology pieces that we are putting together. So and that's how you achieve security. You just don't achieve security entirely through software. You need to do it through both software and through the governance processes. So and the other part is trust. Like because we are working so closely with the Ethereum Foundation, everything is being done in conjunction with them. So it's all open. It's all happening in the open and with the right people outside of Eigen Labs. I think so. That is how you have those discussions about security. You don't ignore them. You tackle them. And you are very honest. Like there are certain things we should not be doing and certain things we should be doing. So let's get together and solve for those.
So maybe the question to all of you then, if you are a developer and you're just about to start building a DApp or an app, what are the properties that you need to optimize for in order to go with one or the other type of architecture that you're talking about? Decentralized versus centralized, modular versus monolithic, vertically integrated versus horizontally integrated. What is that decision tree looking like for you as a developer?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, having optionality from an infrastructure standpoint, with roll-ups, with interoperability with the DeFi stack. I think developers now have the right tool for the right job. The way I think about it is you can leverage off-chain computation, for example, with the Chainlink Oracle node infrastructure. You could leverage computation across roll-ups. You could do sharding of your compute, of your data across different kind of layers of the stack. So you have all these options available that were not available probably 1, 2, or 3 years ago. Obviously, you have wallet abstraction as well, which is a whole other concept. So all these optionality, what that means is it's allowing you to kind of use those Lego blocks and build really the right application that serves your needs and provides the value that you're looking for it to provide. So if you think from that perspective, I feel you can start from what is the user that you're looking to serve, what are their core needs from a business perspective, and from that, you can start putting the Lego blocks in place and then figure out, okay, what are the business logic pieces that I need to focus on to build that dApp, and then obviously audit, test, and then bring it to market.
I love it. Starting with the user. We oftentimes start with a blockchain. Which blockchain is going to give me more tokens? Instead, we should start with the user. Paul, for you, since you're coming from a centralized provider, maybe you can shed the light on, does everything need to be decentralized, or what is okay to be centralized?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that gets to sort of these trade-offs in this decision tree. It's not sort of a static thing, right? It's not like you make your decisions and you're done and you're going to succeed forever, have your journey forever on out. It's a constant thing that you're evaluating. And so at the beginning, right, like Chirag said, is you work back from your customer and you understand, well, what is the most important thing about my proposition to solve customer needs that I need to test out to see if I'm going to get product market fit, right? Like if customers are going to tell me that they really need this. And so from that perspective, you kind of focus on the things that are important. So if it's important that that I have self-sovereign custody, so like I need to have a self-custody wallet, right? That's really important to my use case, and I'm catering to a certain customer base that needs that, then that's something that you need to have decentralized. But does it mean you need to use a decentralized data infrastructure to do your analysis and your metrics and your reporting, or a decentralized storage layer to store actual data for your business logic, right? And no, not necessarily to get started. Maybe there's a vision where you want to move some of those things to that way, and that's where using managed service at AWS, for example, can get you going faster, right? Like we've done some of that, a lot of that heavy lift, and some of that heavy lift for forever can be decentralized. Like I kind of tend to think, I think there's a vision certainly that Eigenlager has in terms of creating a decentralized infrastructure ecosystem, and that's super interesting. And I think AWS has a role in that. We have to change how we offer our services. We have to integrate with a different sort of commerce layer and control plane. But S3 absolutely, with the standard interface on top, could participate in a decentralized infrastructure economy, at the end of the day. But what I think really, at least for the mid and foreseeable term, I feel like there's a couple of things where decentralization is really hitting what is bubbled up to sort of drive this Web3 evangelization, which is ownership, value exchange, and identity. And those are key things where, them being tied up in the silos of the big few tech companies is where that frustration has come about in terms of all of the value of my data is accruing to those companies, and I don't have control over my ability to transact, my ability to be in control of my assets and my identity. And I think focusing on decentralization of those things and not necessarily trying to take one leap to the decentralization of everything, I think will help us find the path to that product market fit for a lot of these apps.
So ownership, value exchange, and identity.
Yeah.
Those are the three properties.
And censorship resistance. I want to make sure that user sovereignty, data ownership, censorship resistance. I don't want all my data, all my compute, everything to be with one, controlled by one entity. That could be a government, that could be a company. I don't know. But I will actually answer that question from why can't I create a decentralized app? Why can't I? So we are working towards the goal of this question doesn't even arise. Like, you have all the tools available, and you're not this dilemma that we discussed. I'm not worried about my performance and my uptime because I can select without having any intermediary in place. I can see all the data that's being published either on chain or on chain or with the decentralized infrastructure services. I can access that information openly. I know that there is actually a massive network of operators who are running this underlying infrastructure. I know that there is no single control from anybody, and I know that there are some high-value premier tier operators who are underpinning this particular service. Not just one, 20 of them, 30 of them, 3,000 of them in the future. So this question doesn't even arise. Like when I was at Facebook, I was like, why can't I have something like Firecaster? Why can't I have something in Lens? It should be like that. So our goal at EigenLayer is to open up the world of off-chain compute, access the entire cryptoeconomic security of the $100+ billion of Ethereum, stop this fragmentation that's happening in this, the different liquidity pools across the different blockchain networks. Let's band together, create a base substrate where EigenLayer can actually access this security and provide the same economic primitives to every single AVS, to every single actively validated service. Right. And all of them interoperate on the same basis. So you just focus on building your actual service and don't worry about these bootstrapping networks and stuff.
So the question of why can't we have decentralized Facebook is opening a new kind of can of worms that we don't have time for. Perhaps another time. But I would like to go, since we have about a minute and a half left, with a quick lightning round, and if we have time after that, I'll ask one more question. So lightning round, quick question, yes or no answer, or a very short answer afterwards. First thing that comes to mind. First question, do we have too much infrastructure in the Web3 space?
No. Not. Should I explain?
Quickly.
Yeah. We don't have not enough of the right infrastructure, not the right primitives.
What's missing?
Expand off-chain compute, access the same underlying security primitives, and build on a common substrate. And then you will see the magic happen.
Paul?
No, not enough. There's a lot, but we need that so that we can get the parallel innovation to find the right product market fit, find the killer apps that are going to get the next million, 100 million, billion users.
Yeah, same, not enough. With every boom and bust cycle, the infrastructure is improving, and that is really helping to make DeFi more secure so that more value can flow in, because I think that's what everybody wants.
So basically, don't build a house of cards. Build a solid infrastructure service layer.
Yeah, that's a controversial answer. Most would say that we have too much infrastructure. Next question, what will be the next most important primitive for 2024, 2025, and you cannot say the name of your company or your space?
So EigenLayer exists not for ourselves. We are here to create this network of AVSs, network of builders, including things like AI, for example. So AI is in everybody's lives right now, and AI really, really needs, companies like Ritual, for example, doing some amazing work on bringing AI to the masses in a decentralized manner on EigenLayer.
So AI is the answer. What about you, Paul?
I think making AI, and what is important for AI is the actual data that trains these AI models. I think that's where decentralization and EigenLayer can play a pretty big role in that.
That's a good one.
I'd say identity. Might be a little further out, but identity, I think, is the...
Yeah, identity, privacy, the whole concept of ZK, because it all goes back to bringing more value, and for TradFi to feel safer in transacting on DeFi, I think you need that.
Identity. Last question, we're out of time. But do you think by 2030, Amazon is going to launch its own token? Yes or no? Or abstain?
Abstain. I'll give you my PR person's name.
All right, without further ado, I'd like to give a round of applause to this amazing panel.